The 2024 NFL season is less than a week away, and because of that, I think it's a good time to finally come out with my predictions for how I think this year is going to play out. So, yeah, before we do get things started, of course, go ahead and hit the like button since it really helps out the channel, and of course, subscribe if you guys are new, and you guys enjoy content like this. That way you don't miss out on any new videos like the one you're watching right now. But without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get things started. So we're going to start things off with my record predictions, and we'll go division by division. And the first one we'll cover is the AFC East. So in first place, I got the Jets winning it at 10-7. Second, I got the Bills going 10-7. Third place, I got the Dolphins going 8-9. And then in last place, I got my team, the Patriots, going 5-12. I think the Jets or Bills will win the AFC East. The Dolphins definitely could win it as well, but I'd bet on Buffalo or New York winning it. I got them both winning 10 games, obviously. It's just in the playoff predictor, the Jets ended up getting, number one. I guess it's because of, tiebreaker stuff, but anyways, the Jets, as long as Aaron Rodgers remains healthy, and as long as he plays at a high level, they should be a good team, and they should make the playoffs. I mean, they got a good roster offensively and defensively, and Robert Saleh isn't that bad of a head coach, so all they really need is good quarterback play. And some people are low on the Jets because, they think Aaron Rodgers is going to be washed, given the fact that he's 40, and he suffered a torn Achilles last year. Along with that, Nathaniel Hackett, they don't really like him, and they think the vibe around that team is just kind of weird. And I do kind of understand those concerns, but me personally, while I definitely think the vibe around this team is weird, and I don't really like Nathaniel Hackett, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be just fine. And again, as long as they got good quarterback play, they should be a good team. The Bills, I see a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, I'd say I do see some people saying that they'll miss the playoffs, and I feel like most NFL fans heading into this year are lower on the Bills compared to years past, and that's largely due to them trading away Stephon Diggs and losing some big names, on defense. However, I gotta be honest, even though I do hate the Bills a lot as a Patriots fan, I think they're gonna be just fine in the regular season. The only offseason loss that kind of worries me is Stephon Diggs. I know that Stephon Diggs wasn't very good in the last half of the 2023 season, and against the Chiefs in the playoffs, he also didn't really show up, and he was starting to become a bit of a locker room cancer. I get why they traded him away, and they did try to replace him with Keon Coleman, but I wasn't very high on him coming out of FSU. And right now, the Bills, they do lack a proven number one receiving option, but as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the big names on defense, they lost like Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. I'm not too worried because Tre'Davious White, while he was good, was extremely injury prone. And then Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde were on the decline. So the Bills, they still got a solid team. Sean McDermott is still a really good head coach, and they got Josh Allen, who's an elite quarterback. And because of that, I think this team, they should be just fine, and I think they are a damn near lock to make the playoffs. Yeah, their regular season may not be completely smooth sailing. Yeah, they may not win the AFC East. But with that said, the Bills are still a pretty good team, and I think they'll make the playoffs. I am lower on the Dolphins. I made a whole video about it earlier this summer. If you guys want to go ahead and check it out, there should be a card popping up right about now. But I guess to quickly summarize it, one, the interior of their O-line is not good. I am a little bit concerned about the health of their defensive line, as I'm wondering how long is it going to take for Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips to get back to form. Plus, Bradley Chubb is missing the first 4 games of this season, and along with that, they did lose Christian Wilkins, and he was one of the best defensive tackles in the league. When it comes to Tua, he's not a bad quarterback at all. He is, in fact, a good quarterback, but he's not a great one. He's not really the type of guy to elevate the team around him, and along with that, he's just more dependent on the supporting cast around him. And last year, whenever the Dolphins played good teams, his play would drop off, and he also just doesn't play very well in big games, and that's also a problem with the Dolphins. Against good teams, they struggle, and that's what they've done the past 2 years. They start off really hot, and then in the second half of the year, they just fumbled the bag and have an underwhelming, finish to the season. And I do think the Dolphins will be in the playoff hunt. They will not be a bad team at all, but I think they're going to disappoint a lot of people. And then lastly with the Patriots, look, the Patriots, they are my favorite team, but unfortunately, we won't be very good this year. I hate to say it, and I'd love to be wrong, but I mean, look, this roster, it's not very good. The AFC is extremely loaded. Their defense, I do think, is pretty good. Gerard Mayo, though he is a rookie head coach, I think he will be fine, but I don't think he's going to be like the greatest head coach of all time or anything like that. And offensively, I do think they will actually be better than they were last year, which, to be fair, isn't difficult to do because last year their offense was, one of the worst in the NFL. I think it will be better, but I don't think it's going to be good enough for them to be like a playoff team. So that's really all I got to say about the AFC East. Next up, we got the AFC North. In first place, I got the Ravens going 12-5. Got the Bengals going 11-6 in second place. Third, I got the Steelers going 9-8. And fourth, I got the Browns also going 9-8. The Ravens, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. I think it's going to be them or the Bengals that win this division. I mean, yeah, the Browns and Steelers aren't bad teams, but I mean, their quarterback situations are pretty concerning. Meanwhile, the Ravens and Bengals, they both got elite quarterbacks, but I think the Ravens will win it. I mean, Lamar Jackson, again, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Their offensive line, I'll admit, it is a little concerning. But that said, it's not a trash offensive line. And Lamar Jackson, I mean, given the fact that he's the best rushing quarterback in the league, I think he should be able to handle, a worse offensive line a little bit better compared to some other QBs. They got Zay Flowers, who I think is going to be even better this year. You got Mark Andrews, who's an elite tight end. I even like Isaiah Likely. Maybe this is the year that Rashad Bateman finally breaks out. They signed Derrick Henry, and I love that addition. And I think a lot of people are kind of, not talking about it more. I think they should be talking about it more. Derrick Henry is still one of the best running backs in the league, and he makes that offense even more lethal. And then defensively, yes, they lost Mike McDonald. Yes, they did lose Patrick Queen, and their edge rushers, they are a little bit concerning, but defensively they are still extremely good. And I think the Ravens, they also got John Harbaugh as well as their head coach. I mean, the Ravens, they're just going to be really good. Not much else to say about them. The Bengals, I think they're going to remind a lot of people, just how good they are when healthy. Last season wasn't very good for them, but that was really just due to the fact that Joe Burrow had a down year largely due to injury. And the Bengals were just ravaged by injuries in general. I think the Bengals are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL next season. I think Joe Burrow is going to be elite. Their offense is going to be elite. Maybe this is the year their offensive line is figured out. I definitely like the additions of Trent Brown and Amarius Mims. Plus, defensively, I think they should bounce back as well. So, not much else to say about the Bengals besides the fact that they're going to be extremely good. The Steelers at 9-8. I mean, look, Mike Tomlin, he's never had a losing season before. I do feel like at some point he probably will. That streak will probably be snapped. It could be this year, but until it does get snapped, I'm going to trust that Mike Tomlin does find a way to get this team over 500. I would like to have them at more wins, but the problem is the AFC is so loaded. The AFC North is a really good division, and like I alluded to earlier, their quarterback situation is not very good. Russell Wilson, he is old, he is on the decline, he is extremely mediocre, and really, he is better than Kenny Pickett, but that's not saying much, and he's not, it's really not saying much. And then Justin Fields, I mean, he definitely does have upside. Maybe he does have a career revival in Pittsburgh, but I'm not a massive fan of Justin Fields. And their receiving core outside of George Pickens is not very good. So the Steelers, they'll find a way to go over 500, but I don't see them winning more than 9 games this year. Then the Browns, they got a really good roster, and Kevin Stefanski is also a good head coach. So I don't see them being like a trash team. But with that said, I'm not a big believer in Deshaun Watson, and if they don't get good quarterback play out of him, I don't know if the Browns will make it back to the playoffs. So that's all I have to say for the AFC North. Next up, we got the AFC South. In first place, I got the Texans going 11-6. Second place, I got the Jaguars going 10-7. Third, I got the Titans going 8-9. Then in last place, I got the Colts going 7-10. The Texans, I'll admit, this division is really good, and I know a lot of people are acting like the Texans, are going to run away with this division, and the Texans are a great team, but I think the other teams will definitely compete for it, but ultimately, I do think Houston wins it. I mean, they got the best quarterback in the division in CJ Stroud. You got a really loaded roster around him. I mean, you got the best pass-catching group in the NFL, in my opinion, with the best wide receiving trio and wide receiving core in the league. You got Dalton Schultz at tight end. Offensive line is fine. I'll admit, their rushing attack, it is pretty concerning. D'Amico Ryans, though, he's a really good head coach. And defensively, they are pretty good. Only questions I really got about their defense is, their secondary. Like, can somebody step up as their corner too? And then how is the safety play going to be? But the Texans, look, this team, they are going to be extremely good. Not much to really say about them. The Jaguars, I know last year a lot of people were, obvious, they were kind of like the off-season darlings. A lot of people were expecting them to be dark horse contenders, and then they obviously had a very disappointing 2023 campaign where they ended the season on a horrible note and missed the playoffs after starting 8-3. And because of that, I feel like a lot of people have way more modest and mellow expectations for them, which I kind of get. But me personally, I think this team is going to be primed for a bounce back season. I think Trevor Lawrence, I think he will take that leap to being a good to a great quarterback. I think this wide receiving core, truthfully, is better than it was last year. I think their offensive line is going to be much better. And defensively, I think they'll be better as well. And I think they will give the Texans a run for their money. And while I don't have them winning the AFC South, I think they will be a playoff team. Then the Titans at 8-9 is going to shock some people. It is higher compared to most people, but I'm higher on the Titans compared to most people. I'm a big fan of Will Levis. I think he will improve a lot this year, given the fact that the supporting cast around him is much better. The weapons are way better. The offensive line, which was the worst in the league last year, I think it's gonna be a lot better than it was last season. I think it'll be average to maybe even above average. And yeah, they did lose Derrick Henry, but Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard are two very good running backs. Brian Callahan, I thought that was a pretty good head coaching hire. And defensively, their secondary, I think, should be much better than it was last season, given the fact that they added L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie. They also did add Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, who, those two guys, they aren't very good players anymore. But again, I do think their secondary should be better. And their front seven, it's pretty good, especially with the addition of Ernest Jones, who they recently traded for. And the Titans, look, man, if Will Levis can ball out and this offensive line can improve, and same thing with the secondary, they will be better than people expect, and they really could make the playoffs. I just don't have them making the playoffs because I do think Will Levis will have some, games where he does struggle, and the AFC at the end of the day is a loaded conference. So some teams that really could make it will end up missing the playoffs. But I do think the Titans will be better than most people think. Then I do have the Colts at 7-10, which is lower than most people expect, and I made a whole video on it recently about why I am lower on them. But to quickly summarize it, one, their secondary I think is just really concerning, and then two, Anthony Richardson, I don't think he's going to have a big breakout season in 2024. I think this is going to be more of a developmental year for him. I think he's going to be inconsistent. He's going to have some pretty good games, but also some pretty bad games as well, and that will hold Indianapolis back. And the AFC, the Colts, they are a playoff contender. I think they will be in the playoff race, but the AFC, you got to understand, it's really loaded, like I said before, and there are going to be some teams who, definitely could make the playoffs and have somewhat high expectations that end up disappointing. So that's what I got to say about the AFC South. And then wrapping up the AFC, we got the AFC West. In first place, I got the Chiefs going 12-5. Second, I got the Chargers going 9-8. Third place, I got the Broncos going 7-10. Last place, unfortunately, I got the Raiders going 6-11. Look, the Chiefs at 12-5 should surprise no one. In my opinion, this is their division to lose. I think they're a damn near lock to win this division. If they were to lose it somehow, some way, I would be extremely shocked. But yeah, that's what I got to say for the Chiefs. The Chargers, look, I do think that I love the Jim Harbaugh hiring. Their roster, it isn't the most talented, but they got a really good head coach in Jim Harbaugh, and they got Justin Herbert at quarterback, and he is an elite quarterback. And with an elite quarterback and an elite coach, they can elevate your team, even if you don't have the most talented roster, and they could lead you to more success than, I guess what your talent level would indicate. And I think I think that will happen with the Chargers. I think they will be, a little bit better than, what their talent indicates. But that said, I do think at some point their lack of talent will come back to, to bite them in the ass and hold them back. But with that said, I think the Chargers, they will be a playoff contender, and they will be really competitive. They very well could make the playoffs, and again, they are going to be better than what their talent level says. The Broncos at 7-10 will surprise some people, but I'm a big believer in Bo Nix. I liked him coming out of Oregon. I know I am a little bit biased since Oregon is my college football team, but I really did like him as a prospect, and I thought the Broncos were a really good landing spot for him. Plus, they got Sean Payton, and he is still a really good head coach. And again, a really good head coach, they can really, really good head coaches, they can elevate your team even if you don't have the most talent. That said, while I do think Denver will be better than most people expect, Bo Nix, he is still a rookie quarterback. I think he will have his struggles, and the Broncos, compared to other teams, just aren't as talented. So I think this year will be a bit of a retool year. But with that said, Denver will be better than people expect. And wrapping things up, I got the Raiders at 6-11. I know that is going to be a little bit disappointing given the fact that they surprised a lot of people last year and went on a hot streak at the end of 2023 to finish 8-9. But with that said, while the Raiders definitely have things to like about them, I do think their defense should be pretty solid this year. I like Antonio Pierce as a head coach, and their weapons, they're pretty good. The problem is, their running back room is unproven, but also the big problem is just quarterback. I know they didn't have a good quarterback situation last year and they went on that hot streak, but I don't know if it's sustainable. Like Gardner Minshew, he's not bad by any means, but he's a game manager. He won't lose you any games, but he won't win you any games, and he does have clear limitations. And I will say, while I do have the Raiders at 11 losses, I think they're going to be extremely competitive, and I think they're going to lose a majority of those games by one score. And if they had a legitimately good quarterback, I think the Raiders, I could definitely see the Raiders in the playoffs. But unfortunately, because of their QB situation, I think the Raiders are going to be kind of below average to mid this year. Now, starting my NFC record predictions with the NFC East. In first place, I got the Eagles going 12-5. Second place, I got the Cowboys going 9-8. Third, I got the Commanders going 5-12. And in last place, I got the Giants going 2-15. I know the Eagles last year had a bit of a Super Bowl slump, and they ended the season obviously on a very, very, very bad note. But me personally, I think the Eagles are due for a bounce back year. I think their coaching is going to be way better. I think their secondary is going to be way better. And I think Jalen Hurts, after a bit of a down season, I think he's going to be in for a bounce back season. And the Eagles, look, they got a really talented team. I think the coaching should be pretty good this year. And I think they're gonna look a lot more like that 2022 version rather than that 2023 version. So yeah, the Eagles, not much else to really say about them. The Cowboys at 9-8 could surprise some people, but Dallas, they aren't a bad team by any means. I think they could win 10, 11 games. They could make the playoffs yet again. That's very possible. But with that said, I feel like I don't know. I'm not the highest on Dallas this year, and there are a few other NFC teams that I'm a little bit higher on. The problem with the Cowboys, their rushing attack is the worst in the NFL. Their secondary, right now it's a little bit concerning because Trayvon Diggs is good. Their safeties aren't too shabby, but the problem is Deron Bland is going to miss half the year as he did have an injury. And so yeah, the other two starting cornerbacks outside of Trayvon Diggs is Jordan Lewis and I think Kalen Carson, I believe. And Kalen Carson was a 5th round rookie, and he was fine coming out of Wake Forest, but he's nothing special. And then Jordan Lewis, he's just not that good. And then along with that, Mike McCarthy, I'm not a massive fan of him as a head coach. And then to add on to it, it seems like him and Jerry Jones are starting to have some, real tensions that I feel like it could just blow up any minute. And I just got a feeling that, I don't know, I just got a gut feeling that this year, it's just gonna blow up in Dallas's face and that they're gonna disappoint. So the Cowboys, they won't be bad this year. Again, they could make the playoffs, but I don't know. I'm just not very high on them. For the Commanders, similar to the Patriots, look, I do, they're still in a rebuilding year. I don't think I think they will be, like, a little bit better than they were last year. I think they will be more competitive, but the problem is, like, again, this roster, still not that good. Jaden Daniels, I think he'll have, like, I think he'll have a good rushing season, but as a passer in his first year, I think it's going to be a little bit up and down. Their O-line is still concerning. Their weapons outside of Terry McLaurin are pretty concerning. And Dan Quinn, I'm not the biggest fan of him as a head coach. Like, with the Falcons, he wasn't, like, the worst coach ever. But with that said, he did get fired for a reason. And with the Falcons, he had a bad habit of blowing leads. And he really did, he had a bad habit of blowing leads. And I'm just not a big fan of him as a head coach. I thought he was just best as an elite defensive coordinator. And this secondary is also just not very good. So the Commanders, again, they're still in a rebuilding year, and I don't think they'll be that good this season. And then the Giants at 2-15. Look, the Giants, they got a nice defense. I really do like Brian Daboll as a head coach. I hate to do this to him, but somebody's got to be the worst team in the NFL. And the problem with the Giants, their quarterback situation is the worst in the NFL. And I mean, their offensive line really not that good. Running back room is also not that special after losing Saquon Barkley. And then along with that, their wide receiving core, I'm not going to say it's definitely not. I'm not going to say it's like horrible. It is pretty promising. I think Malik Neighbors will have a good rookie season. But the problem with the Giants, again, they got the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. And I think their offense is going to be putrid because of that. Next up, we got the NFC North. In first place, I got the Lions going 11-6. Second place, I got the Packers going 10-7. Third place, I got the Bears going 9-8. And then in last place, I got the Vikings going 5-12. Personally, I think the Lions or Packers will win this division. It's going to be mostly those teams, but I do think the Bears, they could, depending on how good Caleb Williams is. I mean, if Caleb Williams is good enough, they definitely could be a sneaky pick to win the NFC North. But the Lions, I got them winning it again. Jared Goff is a pretty good quarterback. I wouldn't say he's elite, but he is pretty good. They got a really good team around him. Dan Campbell's an excellent coach. So yeah, I think the Lions are going to be really good yet again. And defensively, I think they should be much better than they were last year. And then for the Packers, I mean, what we saw from them in the second half of last year, I think we're going to see that pretty much over the course of a full season. I think Jordan Love is going to be amazing. Their offense should be great. I mean, I made a video on the Packers, and I think they could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender if everything does go right. And yeah, defensively, I think they're finally going to be good, and I think that, the coaching is finally going to be good enough for them to play up to what their talent level says they should be. And Matt LaFleur is a really good head coach. As for the Bears, defensively, I think they should be pretty good like they were in the second half of last year. Then offensively, I think they should be really good. I mean, you got a really good weapons group, you got a really good running back room, your O-line isn't too shabby, and then you got Caleb Williams at quarterback. And I mean, that man was a damn near generational prospect coming out of USC. With the pieces around him and given how good of a prospect he was, I think he's going to have a really good rookie season. And I definitely contemplated the Bears actually having more than 9 wins. It's just that I do think Caleb Williams will have some rookie struggles. Plus, there are a few other teams in the NFC who I'm a little bit higher on. But that said, the Bears very well could make the playoffs and win more than 9 games. Like, they could win 10, 11 games. And then the Vikings at 5-12. They got a great offensive supporting cast, and defensively, they got a nice front 7. The problem is, their secondary, well, it's not nearly as bad as it was in previous seasons. Wouldn't call it like a great secondary. And the main issue with them is their quarterback play. I mean, J.J. McCarthy, he's not going to be playing the whole season. And Sam Darnold, I hate to say it, I mean, he's just not a good NFL quarterback. So the Vikings, they're going to be in for another rough season. But hey, I mean, at least I guess they get a high draft pick to add to their team. Next up, we got the NFC South. In first place, I got the Falcons winning it at 9-8. Second, I got the Buccaneers going 8-9. Third, I got the Panthers going 6-11. And then last place, I got the Saints going 4-13. all off season long, I actually did have the Buccaneers as my NFC South as my pick to win the NFC South. As you know, after seeing what they did last year, I kind of just had to give I just wanted to give them that respect. But after seeing the kind of moves the Falcons have made recently, and just looking at all their offseason moves, I'm gonna change my pick to Atlanta. I think their offense should finally be good now that they got now that they got good quarterback play. And I think their play calling is going to be much better than it was the past few years. Defensively, they should still be pretty good, especially with the addition of Matthew Judon, who I love as a Patriots fan, and Justin Simmons. So the Falcons, I think they will win the NFC South. There are some people who think the Falcons will disappoint, as they think Kirk Cousins will not be good coming off that torn Achilles, and given the fact that he's 35 years old, and they also don't like Raheem Morris as a head coach. And I will say I'm not a big fan of the Raheem Morris hiring. I don't think he'll be that good of a head coach, but I do think the Falcons roster is good enough, especially in a weak NFC South, to win this division. So yeah, I think the Falcons will win it. The Buccaneers, I think, will be solid, but that said, I don't think they'll win it, as I do think Baker Mayfield slightly regresses, and I like him, but the problem with Baker Mayfield is that he's lacked consistency in his career. Like, he has a good season, then a bad season, so because of that, I do have a little bit of mistrust in him. I do think their run game and their offensive line should be better than it was last year. Defensively, they aren't awful, but with that said, their edge rushers outside of Yaya Diaby are not very good, and their secondary, it is a little bit concerning. They got good safeties, but their cornerbacks really aren't that great outside of Jamel Dean. So the Buccaneers, I think they will be decent, but I don't think they'll win the NFC South again. And I also do want to add on that I'm not a big fan of Todd Bowles as a head coach. He was better last year, but I'm still not fully on board with him. The Panthers, I gotta be honest, I think they are kind of underrated. I see a lot of people saying that they're gonna be the worst team in the NFL again, and if you're not a Bryce Young believer, I guess I can understand that, but me personally, I still believe in Bryce Young. I think, some people are just too quick to give up on him. I think he's going to have a much better sophomore season. I mean, the team around him is much better, and, if Bryce Young improves a lot, then the Panthers should improve a lot as a team. Plus, Dave Canales, I like that hiring a lot. I mean, he was a big reason why last year the Panthers' rivals in the Buccaneers, won the NFC South, is he helped Baker Mayfield have, a career revival. And along with that, he was a big reason why Geno Smith back in 2022 had his big career revival. So Dave Canales, I think he's going to really do something similar to Bryce Young. And I think Bryce Young, again, he's going to be much better in his sophomore year. Defensively, they are a little bit lacking in talent. But to be fair, Ejiro Evero is a pretty good defensive coordinator. So I think he can elevate that unit. Ultimately, I would like to have the Panthers at more wins, but again, there are a few other NFC teams that I'm higher on. Plus, the Panthers, I think while I do think Bryce Young will be improved, I don't think he'll be a great quarterback. And defensively, I don't think they'll be amazing either. But the Panthers, they should be much improved compared to last year. And then the Saints in last place. Look, I think this is the year the Saints finally blow it up and start a rebuild. I feel like it's inevitable at this point. Dennis Allen is not a good head coach. Derek Carr, he's not that great of a quarterback. Their weapons outside of Chris Olave are not all that amazing. They aren't like dog shit, but they aren't, great either. Their offensive line isn't that good. And defensively, they aren't terrible, but I don't think this defense is going to be good enough for this team to be like a playoff squad. I think this is the year that the Saints blow it up, and I don't expect them to be very good this year. I think they're going to win 4 to 6 games. And then lastly, we're going to wrap things up with the NFC West. In first place, I got the 49ers going 11-6. Second place, I got the Rams going 10-7. Third place, I got the Seahawks going 10-7. And then fourth place, I got the Cardinals going 7-10. The NFC West, personally, I could see the Rams or Seahawks winning it, but I think the 49ers are going to win it yet again. I think they still got the best team. The Rams, they're going to be great offensively. Defensively, I think they should also be better, despite the fact that Aaron Donald did retire, and despite the fact that they idiotically traded away Ernest Jones for like a bag of chips and fries. But defensively, I think they will be better, as I do think their secondary will be better. And I also did like some of the additions to their front seven via the draft. So that said, I don't think their defense is going to be amazing, but it will be better than it was last year. The Seahawks, I gotta be honest, I feel like some people have kind of, in a way, brushed them off. I feel like some people are kind of just like, yeah, the Seahawks, they'll be alright, but nothing crazy. But recently, I think the Seahawks will make the playoffs. They got a really good offense, obviously, with Geno Smith. They got a really good running back duo. They got a really good wide receiving core. I think their offensive line will be better than it was last year. And defensively, they've always had the talent. It's just that the coaching was kind of out. The scheme was kind of outdated. And as a result, the Seahawks defense was just disappointing year in and year out. But this year, I think it's going to change. Mike Macdonald, I love that head coach hiring. And I think he is going to turn this defense into being, one of the better units in the league. And as a result, I think they make the playoffs. And then lastly, the Cardinals at 7-10 will surprise some people, but I think Arizona is going to be better than they were last year. I mean, yeah, they won 4 games last year, but they did exceed expectations, as they did win like 1 or 2 more games than expected, and they were really competitive in their losses. And I think now that Kyler Murray is going to be healthy for the whole season, I think their offense should be really good. Defensively, Defensively, I am kind of concerned though, as they are pretty lacking talent-wise. But with that said, Jonathan Gannon, he is a good defensive mind, so maybe he can elevate that unit a little bit. And I do think he is a really good leader. I liked what he did last year. And I do think Arizona should win, at least one to 2 more games than they did last year. But that's all it is. I gotta say for my record predictions. This is how the playoff seeding went. For the AFC, as you guys can see on the screen, the Chiefs are the 1 seed, the Ravens are the 2 seed, the Texans are the 3 seed, the Jets are the 4 seed, and then the wild card teams are the Bengals at the 5 seed, Bills at 6, and then the Jaguars at the 7 seed. For the NFC playoff seeding, number 1 is the Eagles, 2 is the Lions, 3 is the 49ers, 4 is the Falcons, 5 is the Packers, 6 is the Rams, and 7 is the Seahawks. Alright, so now that we got all of that out of the way, here are my playoff predictions. Starting things off with the AFC, in the wild card round, I got the Bengals beating the Jets, the Texans beating the Bills, and then the Ravens beating the Jaguars. Then in the divisional, I got the Texans beating the Ravens, and then the Chiefs beating the Bengals. And in the AFC Championship game, I did want to be a little bit different, but I got the Chiefs beating the Texans. Now, in the NFC, in the wild card round, I got the Packers beating the Falcons, the 49ers beating the Rams, and then the Lions beating the Seahawks. And then in the divisional round, I guess to spice things up a little bit, I got the Lions beating the 49ers, the Eagles beating the Packers. And then in the NFC Championship game, again, I did want to be a little bit different, but I got the Eagles beating the Lions. And that sets us up with the Super Bowl 57 rematch of the Chiefs and Eagles. I predicted this last year. Unfortunately, I guess for the sake of my predicting skills, it didn't really work out. And I guess for the sake of my predicting skills, hopefully it works out this time. But anyways, yeah, man, the Chiefs and Eagles, I got them rematching in the Super Bowl. And I really did want to pick someone else besides the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. But as you guys can tell, I got the Chiefs winning. Look, I mean, there definitely are other teams that could win it. I think there definitely are other teams that could win it. And three-peating in the NFL, it is extremely hard. I think the last, I don't even remember the last time it happened. I think the last time it happened was like in the 2000s with the Patriots. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, man, it is extremely difficult and it's extremely rare. So, I understand why some people are not picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, but me personally, I've just picked against the Chiefs the last 2 years, and it hasn't worked out for me. And I guess just to be safe, I guess unless they prove otherwise, I'm just gonna pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I'd like to see somebody else win the Super Bowl. Hopefully, it would be my Patriots. Well, that's not gonna happen, but yeah, I got the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl again. I could see someone else winning it, but I got them winning it. But yeah, to end the video, I am gonna give my awards. That I'm gonna give like all the real awards, and then also a few, I guess, made up awards that I have myself. So I have myself. So I'm gonna be giving the award winner, and then also the honorable mention. So starting things off with MVP, I got CJ Stroud winning it, with the honorable mention being Josh Allen. Offensive Player of the Year, I have CeeDee Lamb winning it, the honorable mention being Christian McCaffrey. Defensive Player of the Year, I got Max Crosby winning it, honorable mention going to TJ Watt. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think Caleb Williams wins it, with the honorable mention being Marvin Harrison Jr. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I got Terrion Arnold winning it, honorable mention going to Jarek Verse. Coach of the Year, I got Mike McDonald winning it, honorable mention going to Raheem Morris. Comeback Player of the Year, I got Joe Burrow winning it, honorable mention going to Aaron Rodgers. And then these are my three made up awards. So the first one is going to be Most Improved Player / Breakout Player of the Year. My winner for that award is Bryce Young, with the honorable mention being Will Levis. Then Most Surprising Team, I'm going to pick the Seahawks, with the honorable mention going to the Titans. And then Most Disappointing Team, I'm going to go with the Dolphins, honorable mention being the Cowboys. But that's got to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to me. Again, like, subscribe, do all of that, and then check me out on social media. The links to my Twitter and Instagram are in the description below. But without further ado, I'm out, you guys.